Welcome to the Risk and Repeat podcast, episode number 229. I'm Rob Wright, Security News Director at Tech Target, and I am here with Senior Security News Writer Alex Kalafi. Alex, welcome.
Thanks, Rob.
How are you on this fine Wednesday afternoon?
I'm doing well. There was a marathon of security news, I would say, over the last 2 or 3 months. And I
Yeah,
think last week into this week, we finally gotten some breathing room.
yeah,
And I'm really grateful for that.
yeah. I took a week off last week.
Mm-hmm.
I am back, and we are in it this week, no
Yes,
doubt.
sir.
And one of the things we are talking about today, on the 24th of April, year of our Lord 2024,
Mm-hmm.
is one of the biggest and most impactful ransomware attacks I think we've ever had. I don't think it's a stretch to say that. We are talking about the cyber attack, ransomware attack on Change Healthcare and the effects that it has had, but specifically the most recent news uh, regarding Change Healthcare's and United Health Group's response to the attack. So, Alex, do you want to take us back in time a little bit and sort of quickly summarize the situation? I know most folks probably are familiar with the Change Healthcare attack, but I think there's been so much going on with it that I think it's good to sort of provide a little overview for the listeners out there.
Sure. So Change Healthcare, they are a very large health tech company. They handle a lot of payment processing software for pharmacies, I think hospitals as well, a lot of medical institutions. They do software that handles payment processing. Well, they confirmed that there was a pretty big ransomware attack, initially a cyber attack until it became clear it was a ransomware attack. On February 21st of this year, pretty quickly, Black Hat slash Alpha ransomware recently exit scammed, presumably. They claimed responsibility for the attack, and had demanded money. We didn't know for a pretty long time. I think we only just found out pretty recently, the last few days, in fact, that Change Healthcare did pay over $20 million, but it wasn't clear at first. And then in the weeks following the attack, Black Hat and Alpha, as I said, made an apparent exit scam, as signaled by certain affiliates, because this is a ransomware as a service operation, saying that they hadn't been paid, including a person who was presumably who claimed at least to be someone who actually landed the attack against Change Healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and Alpha Black Hat basically took what seemed to be a $22 million ransom in the form of 350 bitcoins, and then pieced out. Researchers at the time said that this is likely Change Healthcare, but there was no confirmation until a Wired story that dropped on the 22nd, which is Monday of this
Yes,
week.
right.
And that is the very high level, top level version of events.
Yeah, Wired originally last month reported that there had been a $22 million payment to that Bitcoin address, that wallet that was associated with we're just going to call them Black Hat rather
Mhm.
than do the slash thing, to the Black Hat ransomware group. And we widely assumed that it was Change Healthcare that did it because they were in the midst of this massive attack. It was hugely disruptive, as you noted. They're pretty important to a lot of healthcare facilities, doctors' offices, et cetera, and a lot of these organizations, pharmacies, what have you. I mean, just couldn't function, couldn't run their businesses with
Mhm.
this disruption. Um, So hugely impactful attack. So, but for whatever reason, Change Healthcare did not admit or acknowledge or confirm that it had paid until this week. And let's start there. Why? Why do you think that was? Why? I mean, we're talking about, several weeks here that this went on where they just were kind of like radio silent on this. And I guess if you pay, like what's the big deal? Like, I don't understand. I mean, March 4th was the date that that first Wired report came out saying, this ransomware gang controlled address just received 22 million. It's a pretty big fee.
Mm-hmm.
So why do you think that? Why do you think the reluctance to confirm and admit?
Um, so Change Healthcare, they're probably not a company that had to think a ton about security up until that point. At the very least, even if they're a tech company, they're not like a Facebook, they're not like a Google.
Sure.
They while you would hope they have some sophisticated security operation, maybe they don't. And if the question is why did they take so long to disclose, the answer probably is like conventional business wisdom to cover up anything that makes your business look bad, right? Or that
Right.
that you've decided makes your business look bad. And to be honest, I think that's all it comes down to is they're not necessarily thinking about like, oh, maybe transparency would serve our message better at this point. No, it's probably just ransomware bad. Let's not share the fact that we got hit by ransomware as long as we can get away with. And I'll tell you, if the reports of Change Healthcare acquiring companies that were financially wrecked as a result of this
Mm-hmm.
ransomware attack are true, I wouldn't for a second give them the benefit of the doubt that they would do anything other than hold back disclosure as long as they could get away with.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in defense of Change Healthcare and their parent company, there's been reports that they've extended, I guess, funds, a pretty significant amount of funds to assist with, partner organizations that rely on, or customers that rely on their technology and have had to go through this really painful, grueling disruption. I mean, this again, I want to stress this because it's an important part to this overall story. The fact that attack, whatever, February 21st, 22nd, we know what's going on. There's network disruptions, probably ransomware. And, just now
Mm-hmm.
we're kind of getting, oh, hey, we're restoring operations. And oh, by the way, we paid. Uh, which is just, I mean, that's like 2 months. You go back to Colonial Pipeline, which at the time was, I don't know, certainly on the Mount Rushmore of most impactful and damaging ransomware attacks, single ransomware attacks. I'm not talking about like ransomware campaigns like a NotPetya or a WannaCry, which obviously were hugely damaging, destructive, and disruptive. We're talking about like just a single attack on a single entity or organization. Colonial Pipeline was massive just because even though it did not affect the OT systems that ran U.S. Colonial Pipeline's infrastructure, like not their tech infrastructure, their literal pipeline infrastructure. The company, as a response to that attack, shut everything down because the IT systems were they're locked out of their IT systems, and they shut down the pipeline. It's probably a bad idea to run and operate a pipeline without your IT systems, even if they weren't affected. And so
Mm-hmm.
but you hear about like days later, okay, like, yes, we paid a ransom. Yes, we for whatever it was, 4.5 million or and they got, I think, something like 3 million back by working with the FBI. But now we're looking at this attack, and my goodness, the number of businesses that have been negatively impacted by this, and the disruption in the healthcare landscape across the country. And then, a $22 million payment is pretty astounding. And I want to read the statement because I want to get your impression on this, because I thought you can tell a lot from the way some of these things are worded and the way organizations talk about, whether it's the CEO or it's just a corporate statement, a cyber attack, and what they're trying to do and what they're trying to communicate. The statement was from United Health CEO Andrew Whitty. Quote, "We know this attack has caused concern and been disruptive for consumers and providers, and we are committed to doing everything possible to help and provide support to anyone who may need it." That's nice. And then a spokesperson said, quote, "A ransom was paid as part of the company's commitment to do all it could to protect patient data from disclosure," end quote. So two things I come to mind for me, but what's your impression of those statements?
Given the context that the payment of the ransom didn't seem to do much for them, I guess it's one of
Yeah.
those things. Well, the sympathetic part of me says it must be difficult to handle such a nightmare scenario, and when the pressure's on your back, it might make sense to say, like, hey, we could save some time when we're a pretty big part of the medicine pipeline, I guess, for a lot of people. And so we're gonna throw $20 million at this and see what happens, right? Whether they're tied to cyber insurance, I don't know, or what. Like, I understand the logic of this is really tough. We need to do something about it, so let's pay money. On the other hand, 22 million's a lot of money. It's not the most there's ever been, but it's a lot of money. And it really feels like they didn't get much back for it.
Yeah.
I'm not a technical expert by any means, but it's like that's a lot of money for a lot of nothing. Is my guess, my top line reaction. I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you think?
The same. I mean, so Wired had another report. They've been all over this. The reporting has been out in front of a lot of what's gone on with Change and the attack itself and what the threat actors have been doing. And one of the things they found was, this new spinoff ransomware group. Who knows if it's associated with Black Hat? As you noted, they kind of suddenly up and vanished, claiming that they had been infiltrated or compromised by the feds. And a statement from this new group called Ransom Hub claimed to have Change Healthcare data. And threat actors say stuff all the time. Ransomware groups say stuff all the time. It's hard to verify, but apparently they eventually did provide some information, and it was verifiable that at least some of the data belonged to United Health or Change Healthcare. And the story is that they're claiming that the threat actor that was working with Black Hat has now jumped ship and gone to Ransom Hub. And now a different ransomware group has ownership of the data. And so your $22 million payment did nothing to address the data security question, to keep patient data out of it. and we've known this, like, haven't we talked about this a lot, Alex? Just the idea that you can't trust these guys. And when we've seen these busts or these law enforcement takedowns, we know that they still retain a lot of data.
Hmm.
And, who knows how much they really delete and how much they keep or why they keep some and not others. It's not clear. But do you really want to take that gamble? How confident can you be? So now the original threat actor and another ransomware group have this data. The other thing I thought was interesting about all of this was the statement from the United Health Group spokesperson said, but we paid the ransom as part of the company's commitment to do all it could to protect patient data from disclosure. Okay, well, you paid $22 million just to keep the data out of the hands of the threat actors. What about getting the decryptor?
Hmm.
There's nothing in there about that. I assume they got some type of decryption key. It's not clear that they did. And if they did get a decryption key, it doesn't seem like it helped them at all. Again, we're going back to March 4th when that payment was transmitted. And we're still dealing with disruptions and sort of restoration into April. I mean, that's bizarre.
This
So
is this is something that makes me think a lot about the supposed boardroom conversation of security, right? Of the tension that probably exists between the people in the company who really think about security all the time, and then the people at the top who are making all these decisions. And I don't know. We don't have a lot of visibility into what's going on, but to hear about thinking about the possibility that the idea that they paid all this money and didn't do anything to prevent the underlying security, didn't disclose the cyber attack for months, or didn't disclose the fact that they paid the ransom for months. It really, to me, makes me wonder if people at the top with a lot of power and not a ton of security know-how were like, "Hey, you're effing up, you're messing up our business." If they're saying you're messing up our business, we need to fix this now, throw money at it until it's not a problem anymore, and not really caring about the security part. That's something I'm wondering.
yeah, it's absolutely fair to wonder what's going on with the decision making. And again, not to compare this in perpetuity here, like just endlessly to the Colonial Pipeline attack, but I feel like when that happened, the CEO again, whose name I can't recall at the moment, and that guy
Mhm.
was like hauled before Congress,
Mhm.
and uh I think was pretty accountable and pretty reasonable and pretty informed about, hey, we saw this happen. This is what we did. We didn't want to pay the ransom, but we felt like, you know, obviously I don't want to be the reason there's a gas crisis on the East Coast.
Right.
Uh, Worked with law enforcement. We did X, Y, and Z. We shut down all these IT systems when we saw it was starting. So like, you can say any company out there that gets hit with a cyber attack might not be totally prepared and might not have security top of mind. In this case, it felt like they had done a fair amount to uh, prepare for something like this and at least have some type of incident response plan.
Mhm.
In this case, I am wondering like what in the world happened, regardless of how the attack started. I mean, attacks happen. I get it, but like, normally we see attacks, they start to unfold throughout network infrastructure, throughout cloud, whatever, and you start shutting systems down to like limit the limit the blast radius. In this
Mhm.
case, it just seemed like everything was disrupted for change and that they didn't, I don't know, that they weren't on top of it, at least from this exterior perspective, from an outsider's perspective.
if the people holding the keys did not think about or care much about security, that would explain every question you have. We do not know for a fact that this is the case, of course. I will disclose that, but it would make sense.
Yeah. And I wonder, do you think do
Mm-hmm.
you think that this is it's not a Rubicon to me. Like either you cross the Rubicon or you don't. You like there's no halfway. It's you can't be halfway pregnant, yada yada
Right.
yada. But I do wonder like if this attack is going to be used as sort of a wedge to move the needle on the ransom payment ban discussion. Because
Mm-hmm.
I got to tell you, there's a lot of critics out there. There's a lot of supporters of those bans that are going to have a field day. They are having a field day with this. And I don't blame them because this is just, you just gave $22 million to the bad guys and you got nothing to show for it. Maybe we'll find out during, I assume there's going to be some type of hearing for Change Healthcare and United Health Group. Maybe we'll find out like, hey, they gave us the decryptor too. We used it. We got 90, we got 70% of the way, 80% of the way, whatever. But, that last 10, 15, 20% was so impactful and so pivotal that we couldn't get the systems back online as quickly as possible. So we got all this other data that got restored, but these really sensitive parts of the network remain encrypted and we just had to rebuild them. And that's why it took so long. Fine, fine. But again, that's going to be used as an example for the folks out there that want to ban ransom payments to say, what is even the point? What is the point of paying these guys, these gangs, $22 million so they can just continue their businesses, fund their attacks, get rich off you guys? What's the point?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. What are your thoughts? Do you think this is going to be a lot of ammunition for that debate, or maybe it goes the other way? I don't know.
Um, I think unoptimistically that um if Congress doesn't hold them accountable in any way, because I do think that this does maybe itch close to a critical infrastructure type conversation.
Sure, sure, yeah,
If it's not escalated as such, we're talking about another one of these in 2 months, right? Or 3 months or 4 months, and nothing really happens. That's the cynical, but I fear most realistic uh response to what is the outcome of this. The most realistic outcome is nothing.
yeah.
I don't know. What do you think?
I'm trying not to be cynical, but I definitely see your point. I mean, I think there's going to be a hearing or hearings, plural. There's going to be a lot of questions for them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious to see what their responses will be and what the response from the government will be based on those testimonies or statements.
Sure.
I do. I have one last question because I think this is going to go a long way to kind of signal where we're at in this
Mm-hmm.
discussion and this debate and this whole big picture about what to do about ransomware. Do you think Change Healthcare is going to make another payment to Ransom Hub to get them to delete the data?
No. If if there's a hearing, absolutely not. Right?
Well, they got to, I mean,
That's
they've got to decide soon. So I think it'll definitely be before whatever Congress has planned.
I don't think so. I think even if it's as I speculate, and it's non-security people making these big decisions that they maybe shouldn't be making, even that theoretical person must understand how bad of an idea it is to pay. That is unless there is someone who is a lawyer who is being paid a lot of money, and a
Mhm.
cyber insurance policy that is worth a lot of money. And
Uh-huh.
everyone looks at this and says, you have to do this, even if nothing happens. You have to do this because the world can be dumb sometimes. That's the condition that I see them paying. But on a practical, should they pay to, would they pay if the only stake is, I, I, I could see it, but I don't think they will unless it's like a legal thing.
I'll say this.
Okay.
If Change Healthcare
Hmm.
gets a ransom note from Ransom Hub and the affiliate that says, look, we know you paid, but we got screwed. Pay us 2 million and we'll go away. 2 million. A small percentage of what that 22 million was. You've already paid 22 million, pay us 2 million, we're gone.
Hmm.
Wouldn't surprise me at all if they do it. Would not
You're
surprise
right.
me at all. And then we're back to square one with the discussions about why do you do the things that you do? Why do you pay these guys? What are you really getting out of it? Because who knows if they actually will delete it. And if they don't delete it, I'm honestly like, what does it matter?
Hmm.
I don't know. But that's where we're at. That's where we're at. We have a
Yeah.
new sort of leader on the leaderboard for biggest ransomware attacks, biggest ransom payments, or known payments, confirmed payments. This is going to be going on for a while. I'm sure. I'm sure we're going to get hearings. I'm sure we're going to have more insight into what went on here and why. But we'll leave it there for now. 22 million up in
Yep.
smoke. Well, Alex, I appreciate you joining me for this discussion, albeit a somewhat depressing discussion about ransomware attack and paying the ransom and what you get out of it, but I appreciate it nonetheless.
Sounds like a Tuesday, Rob. Always a pleasure.
And thank you to the readers and listeners of Tech Target and Risk and Repeat podcast. I'm Rob Wright, and we'll see you next time.